The Sony a7 III is a popular, high-performance mirrorless camera, and using the best Sony a7III lenses will help you get the most out of it. We've compiled a list of the best lenses for the Sony a7 III. And all the lenses in this list are also compatible with the Sony a7 II and a7IV. We've also included lenses for every type of photography, but the Sony FE 70 to 200mm f2.8 zoom lens is our favorite Sony a7 lens. The focal length is versatile. It lets you shoot portrait, sport, street, wildlife, and nature photography. And its autofocus, AF, and stabilization perform well. Read on for more info and more lenses. Cameras in the Sony a7 series, like the Sony a7 III and Sony a7IV, have the Sony E mount. And because they are full-frame cameras, they are compatible with Sony FE lenses. The Sony FE lens catalog is extensive, and there are plenty of high-quality lenses to choose from. You can also find an FE mount lens for all types of photography. Number 1. Sony FE 70 to 200mm f2.8 GM zoom lens. The Sony FE 70 to 200mm f2.8 GM zoom lens is an updated and more expensive version of its predecessor. It's a lens I have, and I always find myself reaching for this lens first. I bought mine for 3 reasons. The enhanced image quality, the reduced weight, new linear focus motors to speed up the autofocus system. You also get an aperture control ring. I prefer to change my aperture settings in camera, but the control ring gives you a manual control option. There is slight pincushion distortion at the long end of the zoom. This isn't ideal, but you only notice this distortion when you reach the full zoom limit. It's also easy to remove in Lightroom. It's easy to achieve a beautiful bokeh effect using this lens. That's a fantastic effect for portrait, fashion, and product photography. You get misshapen cat eye bokeh around the edge of the frame at f2.8, but they round out if you stop down to f4. It weighs 2.3 pounds, 1.0 kilograms, so it takes over from the Canon RF 70 to 200mm f2.8 liters as the market's lightest f2.8 24 to 70mm lens. The 3-mode optical steady shot OS stabilization means handheld shooting is a breeze. I often use my 2.0x teleconverter to make mine into the equivalent of a 140 to 400mm lens. That gives me slightly more flexibility to frame the larger animals on safari, but it does mean losing a bit of sharpness and a couple of stops of light. There are several controls on the barrel: a focus limiter, an iris lock, OS control switches, an AF/MF switch. The direct manual focus DMF slider overrides the AF system whenever you need to switch to manual. It's weather sealed with an anti-smudge fluorine coating on the front element. The barrel is painted white to keep the temperature down. This is handy when you're on safari in Africa. It has an internal zoom mechanism, which means it doesn't get longer or shorter as you zoom in and out. It accepts 77mm screw-in filters, and a handy window in the lens hood lets you rotate a circular polarizing filter if you have one. The tripod foot doesn't fit Arca Swiss mounts, but that's not too much of a problem at a medium focal range, and I like that you can remove it to save even more weight. This is a must-have lens for the Sony a7 III and a7IV. Number 2. Sony FE 12 to 24mm f4G. A wide-angle zoom is a must-have lens in any photographer's kit bag, and this FE 12 to 14mm f4G lens is one of the best for a Sony a7 III. The focal length range gives you plenty of shooting angles, and you can use it for all kinds of creative photography. The wide-angle field of view is perfect for real estate interiors. You can shoot properties in their best light, and you can make pokey rooms appear light and spacious. That's ideal if you're going into real estate photography or shooting a property for Airbnb. This lens doesn't have the fastest aperture, with a max of f4, but it is constant throughout the zoom range. That means you don't lose any stops as you extend the zoom. The DDS-SM direct drive supersonic wave motor powers the autofocus. It's fast and precise, which is exactly what you need when using high-resolution cameras. It's quick to find focus, and it makes very little noise when moving. The optical quality is excellent overall. You might fight signs of distortion at the edges of your shots when at either extreme of the zoom range, but this is minimal and nothing out of the ordinary. The glass has a nano coating that reduces glare, and the lens is dust and moisture resistant. Number 3. Sony FE 50mm f1.4 prime lens. A 50mm prime lens is one of the most versatile pieces of glass you can shoot with. They give you a field of view similar to the human eye, and they can be used for many different types of photography. The Sony FE 50mm f1.4 prime is the lens to go for. The 50mm focal length gives you plenty of shot options. You can shoot everything from landscape to portrait photography. While you can't zoom with a prime lens, you have crisp and sharp image quality. You might experience some glare in direct light, but you don't need to worry about distortion with this lens. This prime has a fast f1.4 maximum aperture that gives you excellent exposure control and better low light performance. And when combined with the 11-blade aperture ring, you get stunning bokeh. You'll have incredible portraits and product shots. The autofocus is powered by a supersonic motor, SSM. It has a fast operation and is consistently accurate when finding focus, and it barely makes a noise. There's a handy switch on the body of the lens that allows you to change from auto to manual focusing. You can switch between the two in a fraction of a second, and you don't need to change your camera settings. It's a fast and efficient solution. Number 4. Sony FE 14mm f1.8 GM prime lens. The Sony FE 14mm f1.8 GM prime lens is a quality piece of glass, and it's a fantastic wide-angle lens for a Sony a7III or a7IV. It doesn't have the same level of versatility as the wide-angle zoom, but this prime gives you pristine image quality with every shot. The 14mm focal length is wide enough for property interiors, and you can capture impressive architecture shots and breathtaking landscapes. The fast f1.4 aperture is a fantastic feature of this lens. It gives you plenty of natural light to play with, and you can achieve a shallow depth of field for lovely soft bokeh. The optical quality is of the highest order. You expect good image quality from prime lenses, but the optical engineering and super-red glass remove the risk of glare and ghosting, so you get pristine images every time. The AF system is driven by 2XD. Extreme dynamic linear motors. You can hear the motors when focusing, but it's nothing alarming. It won't disturb your subject or cause distractions. The benefit of the dual motor system is super fast and responsive focusing. It's a fair trade if you ask me. Number 5. Sigma 14 to 24mm f2.8 art DGHSM zoom lens for Sony E-mount. Sigma designed the 14 to 24mm f2.8 art wide-angle lens from the ground up for mirrorless cameras. It's weather-sealed, and the build quality is excellent even. Though it weighs only 1.8 pounds, 795 grams, it has Sigma's nanoporous coating and super multi-layer coating. They ensure good contrast and resistance to ghosting and flare. It also has these lens elements: 3 aspherical elements, 1 fluorite low dispersion element, 5 special low dispersion elements. These guarantee sharp images at all focal lengths, even in the corners of the frame. There is some barrel distortion and vignetting wide open at 14 to 16mm, but this gets better at f5.6. At the other end of the zoom range, there is pincushion distortion at f2.8, but you can solve this by turning on the in-camera correction, or you can also fix it in post-production. For instance, you can tick the Enable Profile Corrections checkbox in Lightroom. The two main problems with the lens are the lack of image stabilization and a filter thread. Again, though solutions do exist. The Sony a7III comes with in-body image stabilization, IBIS, which should do the trick on its own. Number 6. Sony FE 24 to 70mm f2.8 GM2 zoom lens. What's the best reason to buy a Sony FE 24 to 70mm f2.8 GM2 zoom lens? Like all G Master lenses, Sony designed it with the highest image quality in mind. The lens offers phenomenal sharpness at all apertures and distances. This is due to the 20-element design. It has 2 extreme aspherical, 2 extra low dispersion, ED, and 2 more super ED elements. The latter is extremely low dispersion glass. Color fringing and barrel distortion are minimal. Focus breathing while shooting video has been reduced even more. The Nano Arkansas coating 2 takes care of any ghosting and flare, and the fluorine coating protects against grease and water. The wide constant maximum aperture is handy for low light conditions. It also gives you a smooth background bokeh. The 11-blade aperture diaphragm helps this. The 4 extreme dynamic XD linear motors provide fast and accurate autofocus. AF tracking while zooming is twice as good as on the old version, and continuous focus tracking can comfortably handle frame rates of 30 fps in 4K video at 120 fps.